Daddy, why does mommy call you her biggest mistake when you're not home? My daughter's innocent question hit me like a punch to the gut. I froze, the fairy tale book in my hands suddenly feeling heavier than concrete. Lily looked up at me with those big brown eyes, my eyes, waiting for an answer that wouldn't shatter her world at 10 years old. I forced a smile. Where did you hear that, sweetie? Last week. Mommy was talking to Uncle Patrick on the phone. She thought I was watching TV, but I was getting water. Lily twisted her favorite stuffed penguin in her small hands. She laughed when she said it. Is it a grown-up joke? A grown-up joke. I latched onto the lifeline my daughter had unwittingly thrown me. That's exactly what it is, Lil. Just a silly grown-up joke. I smoothed her dark hair, so much like her mother's. Your mom and I tease each other sometimes. Like when I call her the laundry monster for leaving clothes everywhere. Lily giggled, satisfied with my explanation. That's true. She does leave clothes everywhere. I finished reading her favorite story about brave knights and clever princesses. By the time I reached the happily ever after, her eyelids were drooping. I love you to the moon and back, I whispered, tucking the blanket around her shoulders. Love you more, she murmured, already half asleep. I turned off the lamp, leaving only her night light glowing softly against the darkness, and quietly closed her door. The house felt too quiet now. Too empty. Too full of questions. Her biggest mistake. I poured myself 2 fingers of whiskey and sank into the leather armchair in my home office. Through the window, Chicago's skyline glittered against the night sky. 15 years ago, I'd been a security guard at a downtown club when Vanessa Montgomery walked in with her med school friends. The ambitious daughter of a respected judge and a no-name bouncer. We were an unlikely match. But something sparked between us. Back then, her laugh had been genuine. Her eyes had lit up when I entered a room. When had that changed? I took a long swallow of whiskey, letting it burn down my throat. Tomorrow was Lily's school presentation. Vanessa had promised to be there, though she'd been working late at the hospital more often lately. Budget crisis, she claimed. The memory of yesterday's text message on her phone surfaced in my mind. I'd glimpsed it when her phone lit up on the kitchen counter. Same time tomorrow? I'll bring wine this time. The sender's name was just A. I brushed it off, probably a colleague planning a work meeting. Why had I so easily accepted that explanation? Her biggest mistake. I pulled out my phone and opened our family locator app. For safety, we'd always said, Chicago could be dangerous. Vanessa's that showed she wasn't at Northwestern Memorial. Instead, she was in a residential area in Evanston I didn't recognize. The front door opened at midnight. I heard Vanessa's keys jingling, her heels clicking on the hardwood. I remained in my darkened office, watching as she passed by the doorway. She smelled of unfamiliar cologne and white wine. Hey, I called softly. She startled, her hand flying to her chest. Dominic, you scared me. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. What are you still doing up? Just finishing some work. How was the budget meeting? A flicker of hesitation crossed her face. Exhausting. The hospital administration is cutting corners everywhere. She set down her purse, avoiding eye contact. I think I'm going to grab a shower and head to bed. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She snatched it quickly, glancing at the screen. Just Patrice from work, she explained without being asked. I need to take this. Hospital stuff. She disappeared into the bathroom, closing the door behind her. Through the door, I could hear her voice, too low to make out words, but unmistakably hushed and intimate. I stared at my empty glass, the bitter taste of more than just whiskey lingering on my tongue. 15 years together. A beautiful daughter. A home rebuilt after the fire 5 years ago. And now, an innocent question that wasn't innocent at all. Why does mommy call you her biggest mistake? The answer I was beginning to fear would cost me everything. I called in sick to work the next morning. In 15 years at the architectural firm, I'd rarely taken unexpected time off. My dedication to projects had earned me a senior position and the flexibility to work from home occasionally. Today I needed that trust. Food poisoning, I told my boss, manufacturing a weak voice. Must have been the seafood. My home office felt different in the morning light, less a sanctuary and more an archaeological site where I'd excavate the ruins of my marriage. After dropping Lily at school, I settled at my desk with Vanessa's laptop. She'd left for the hospital early, citing rounds with residents. The password was our anniversary, a date she apparently didn't value enough to keep sacred. I felt a twinge of guilt as I logged in, but it evaporated when I saw her browser history. Divorce Attorneys Chicago specialized in high asset separation. How to secure full custody from uninvolved father. Hiding assets before divorce. Filing apartment rentals. Evanston Pet Friendly. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just an affair, this was strategic warfare. How long had she been planning this? I dug deeper. Her email revealed consultations with 3 different divorce attorneys over the past 2 months. Each time she'd used different variations of controlling husband and prioritizes career over family to describe me. The bank statements showed the truth. Small transfers from our joint account to a private one I hadn't known existed. $400 here, $600 there, totaling over $4,000 since January. My hands trembled as I checked the bedroom next, searching through drawers until I found a flash drive taped under her jewelry box. The contents were meticulous. A detailed exit strategy, financial projections, custody plans, and a folder labeled Evidence. Inside were dozens of photos, me looking exasperated while helping Lily with homework, me frowning at a bill, me tired after a 16-hour workday on the affordable housing project I'd poured my heart into. Each image carefully curated to paint me as distant and temperamental. Not a single photo showed me reading Lily bedtime stories every night. None captured me coaching her soccer team or building her science projects. The narrative Vanessa was constructing erased the father I had fought to be. I needed air. Grabbing my keys, I drove to the Evanston address where Vanessa's phone had been the night before. The neighborhood was upscale but not ostentatious, newer townhomes with tasteful landscaping. I parked across the street, uncertain what I was even doing there. Then the front door opened and my world collapsed. My brother Neil stepped out first, laughing at something. Vanessa followed, reaching up to straighten his collar before kissing him quickly on the lips. They looked comfortable together, practiced, a couple with history. My younger brother. The one I defended 2 years ago when his architectural license was suspended over falsified safety reports. The one I'd vouched for professionally, risking my own reputation. The one who had stayed in our guest room for months after his divorce, playing with Lily and sharing dinners at our table. I drove home in a fog, muscle memory navigating streets I couldn't consciously see through the red haze of betrayal. 2 betrayals. The 2 people I trusted most. Back at my desk, I examined Vanessa's emails again, this time searching specifically for communication with Neil. I found them in a hidden folder labeled Colorado Plans. From Neil Foster to Vanessa Montgomery Foster. Subject: Boulder Options. Found a perfect place near Pearl Street. 3 bedrooms, plenty of space for Lily. Schools in the area are excellent. I can finally restart my practice where no one knows about the licensing issue. Clean slate for all of us once the divorce is final. I still can't believe he hasn't noticed anything. Remember when he said he trusted you completely during dinner last month? I almost choked on my wine. 14 months together and he's clueless. The house in Boulder needs 25% down. Can you move more from the joint account this week? Miss you already. Last night was amazing. 14 months. During our family dinners, holiday celebrations, and Lily's birthday parties, they had been laughing at me behind my back. While I rebuilt our house after the fire and worked overtime to maintain our lifestyle, my brother had been destroying my family from within. More emails revealed Vanessa's affair hadn't started with Neil. Before him, she'd been involved with a colleague at the hospital, an affair that had apparently fizzled when he refused to leave his wife. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa, inviting Neil for dinner tonight. It's been weeks since he visited. That okay? I stared at the message, a strange calm settling over me. My fingers typed a response that betrayed none of the hurricane raging inside me. Sure. I'll pick up some of that bourbon he likes. The game they had been playing for over a year, I was now a player too. But unlike them, I would be playing to win. Confrontation is the enemy of preparation, Mr. Foster. Maxwell Sloan leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. The moment they know you know, they'll destroy evidence, accelerate their plans, and weaponize your daughter. I'd chosen Sloan after researching the most ruthless divorce attorneys in Chicago. His corner office overlooking Millennium Park spoke of success. The predatory gleam in his eyes promised it. So I'm supposed to play house with the people who've been laughing at me for over a year? My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. For now, yes. Sloan slid on reading glasses to review the documents I'd brought. These emails alone are damning, but Illinois is a no-fault state. What we need is financial evidence, proof of parental alienation, and documented patterns of dishonesty that would impact custody. He paused, studying me. Your brother, has his name come up in legal circles before? 2 years ago. He falsified building safety reports for a commercial project. Nearly lost his license permanently. Sloane's eyes narrowed with recognition. Foster. I thought your name sounded familiar. I represented the development company that sued him. A small world indeed. Is that a conflict of interest? Not at all. His smile was all teeth. In fact, I consider it fortuitous. I know exactly what kind of man we're dealing with. We spent the next hour outlining a strategy. I would document everything while maintaining the appearance of an oblivious husband. Meanwhile, Sloane would prepare the legal groundwork for when the time came to strike. One last thing, Sloane said as I prepared to leave. Install cameras in your home, common areas only, nothing in bedrooms or bathrooms. Illinois is a two-party consent state for audio recording, but video without audio in your own home is perfectly legal. That evening, I watched Vanessa prepare dinner for Neil's visit. She hummed while chopping vegetables, occasionally checking her phone and smiling at messages I knew were from him. Need any help? I asked, casually leaning against the counter. She startled slightly. You scared me. I didn't hear you come in. Her smile seemed practiced, her eyes never quite meeting mine. Could you open some wine? Neil just texted he's running late, something about a job interview in Evanston. Another lie. Neil hadn't worked since his license suspension, subsisting on borrowed money and my occasional financial help. A job interview? That's great. What firm? Some new commercial developer. He didn't give details. She turned back to the cutting board, shoulders tense. I opened wine and poured 3 glasses, maintaining the charade. The hidden cameras I'd installed that afternoon, disguised as smoke detectors and picture frames, captured everything. By the time Neil arrived, bearing an expensive bottle of scotch purchased with money likely siphoned from my accounts, I had perfected my mask of ignorance. Dom? He embraced me with false brotherhood. How's my successful big brother? Still saving the architectural world one building at a time. I returned his hug, noting how he smelled of Vanessa's favorite perfume. Just plugging away. Heard you had a job interview, congratulations. Early days, he deflected, eyes flickering to Vanessa. Nothing certain yet. Throughout dinner, I observed their choreographed performance. The careful distance they maintained, the brief touches disguised as casual interaction, the private jokes thinly veiled as innocent conversation. Remember that fire inspector who gave us trouble after the house fire? Neil asked, refilling Vanessa's wine glass with practiced familiarity. Heard he finally retired. Vanessa laughed. Thank goodness. He was convinced we had something to do with it. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. What had they said? The fire that destroyed half our home 5 years ago had been ruled accidental. Faulty wiring in the guest room where, ironically, Neil had stayed frequently. Insurance nightmare, I contributed, watching their reactions closely. But at least we got to redesign the West Wing. Neil's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Your design. I just offered suggestions. But he hadn't been there during the rebuilding. Or had he? I suddenly questioned my memory of those chaotic weeks following the fire. After dinner, I volunteered to clear dishes while they stepped into the garden for fresh air. Through the kitchen window I watched them. The moment they thought they were alone, their posture changed. Neil's hand rested possessively on her lower back. Vanessa leaned into him, laughing at something he whispered. I activated the audio recording app on my phone and set it on the windowsill before stepping outside, making enough noise to announce my approach. Their bodies separated instantly. That night, listening to the recording, I heard what they really thought of me. How much longer? Neil had asked. Filing next month, Vanessa answered. The lawyer says with the documentation I've gathered, I'll get primary custody. Dominic won't know what hit him. Does he suspect anything about the fire? Please. He believed the official report without question. Always the rule follower. I sat in my darkened office, their laughter echoing in my headphones, cold rage crystallizing into resolve. The viper's nest in my home had grown more venomous than I'd imagined. It was time to start extracting their fangs, one by one. I'm unhappy, Dominic. Vanessa sat across from me at our kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she hadn't touched. I think we should separate. 5 weeks had passed since I discovered her betrayal. 5 weeks of living a double life, playing the oblivious husband while meticulously building my case. Her declaration was right on schedule according to the timeline I'd found on her flash drive. I manufactured a look of shock, then confusion, then pain. Unhappy? Where is this coming from, Van? She couldn't quite meet my eyes. It's been building for a long time. We've grown apart. You're so focused on work. I can cut back my hours, I interrupted, part of the performance. We can do counseling. Her eyes hardened slightly. I've made my decision. I've been talking to a lawyer. Of course she had. 3 lawyers, actually. Don't you think we owe it to Lily to try? I reached for her hand, which she withdrew. It's better for Lily if we don't drag this out. She stood, signaling the end of the conversation. I'll be staying at a hotel tonight. I need space to think. A hotel. Right. Neil's address would be more accurate. After she left, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Dominic Foster? A male voice I didn't recognize. Speaking. It's Patrick Montgomery, Vanessa's brother. Vanessa's older brother Patrick and I had never been close. As a federal prosecutor in Boston, he visited Chicago rarely and always seemed to regard me with the same barely concealed disdain as their father, Judge Richard Montgomery. Patrick, this is unexpected. Listen, his voice lowered. Vanessa called our parents this morning to tell them she's filing for divorce. I thought you should know I don't support what she's doing. I leaned forward. What do you mean? She's been feeding the family stories for months, claiming you're emotionally abusive, neglectful with Lily. I didn't buy it. Vanessa has always embellished the truth. An understatement of Olympic proportions. I'm not taking sides, Patrick continued, but a man deserves fair warning when he's being set up. She's coming after you hard, Dominic. After we hung up, I called Sloan to update him. The wheels were turning faster now. A week later, I was ambushed at work by a courier delivering divorce papers. Vanessa was requesting full custody of Lily, our house, and half my retirement savings, citing emotional abuse and parental neglect as grounds. Instead of returning home, I checked into a downtown hotel, called Lily to say I had an emergency work project, and spent the night reviewing the documentation we'd gathered. My phone exploded with messages from Vanessa. Where are you? Why aren't you coming home? This isn't what my lawyer advised, you're only making things worse by disappearing. She was panicking because I deviated from her script. In her planned scenario, I would return home furious, perhaps yell, providing more evidence of my supposed temperament. By morning she'd shifted tactics, texting. Lily is asking for you. She's upset. Child weaponization right on cue. I responded simply, I'll pick her up from school today and take her for ice cream. Need space to process everything. Meanwhile, Sloan filed our counterpetition with the evidence we'd been gathering. Financial records showing Vanessa's systematic theft. Location data proving her whereabouts conflicted with her claims. Emails revealing her planned parental alienation. Recordings of conversations where she and Neil mocked me and discussed manipulating Lily. The final piece was a notarized statement from Meredith Weiss, a forensic accountant who had uncovered Vanessa's tax fraud. She'd been claiming fabricated deductions for years without my knowledge, putting us both at risk with the IRS. Your wife's been busy, Meredith had said during our meeting, her sharp eyes scanning spreadsheets. But she's left digital fingerprints everywhere. Meredith had also discovered something unexpected. Neil had massive gambling debts to people who didn't issue payment reminders through official channels. That explains the rush to secure assets and flee to Colorado, Sloan observed. Your brother isn't just running from his professional disgrace. He's running from creditors who break kneecaps instead of filing lawsuits. I picked Lily up from school as promised. Her smile when she saw me waiting healed something in my chest that had been broken for weeks. Daddy, you're here. She threw her arms around me. Mommy said you might be too busy. Another attempt at alienation. I'm never too busy for you, Lil. Never. Over ice cream, Lily revealed more of Vanessa's manipulation. Mommy says you're very angry about adult stuff, she said, swirling her spoon through chocolate sauce. She says sometimes daddies get mean during divorce. My heart cracked. Do I seem mean to you right now? She shook her head. No. But Uncle Neil said sometimes people hide their true feelings. Uncle Neil. Of course. Lily, no matter what happens between me and Mommy, I will never be mean to you. You can always tell me anything, ask me anything. She nodded solemnly. Can we live in Colorado? Uncle Neil showed me pictures of mountains and said there's a school there with a big art program. So they'd already been prepping her for the move. My resolve hardened. That evening, Gregory Walsh, Vanessa's attorney, called Sloan requesting an urgent meeting. Our counterpetition had landed like a grenade. They want to talk settlement, Sloan reported, satisfaction evident in his voice. I think it's time you stop playing defense, Mr. Foster. I agreed. The counterattack had begun. News of our divorce spread like wildfire through our social circles. I maintained a dignified silence while Vanessa wove elaborate tales of victimhood to anyone who would listen. My strategy was simple: let the evidence speak in court, not in the court of public opinion. You wouldn't believe what Jessica told me, my colleague Michael said during lunch. Apparently, Vanessa's telling people you embezzled from your firm to fund a gambling addiction. I took a measured sip of water. Is that so? Don't you want to defend yourself? Michael looked confused by my calmness. To what end? Those who know me won't believe it. Those who don't won't matter when this is over. The firm's managing partners had received anonymous emails about my supposed ethical violations, Vanessa's handiwork, no doubt. But 15 years of impeccable work spoke louder than anonymous accusations, and they stood firmly behind me. The hardest conversation was with Lily. She found me in the kitchen of my temporary apartment, where she was staying for our first weekend under the interim custody arrangement. "Daddy, why are you and Mommy getting divorced?" She clutched her penguin, eyes wide with worry that no 10-year-old should carry. I set aside the pancake batter and knelt to her level. Sometimes adults grow in different directions, like two trees that start side by side but reach for different patches of sunlight. Is it because of me? Her voice was small, fragile. Absolutely not. I gathered her into my arms. Nothing about this is your fault. Nothing. She buried her face in my shoulder. I knew something was wrong for a long time. You and Mommy stopped laughing together. And Uncle Neil? He told me daddies get angry during divorce and sometimes do bad things. My blood boiled, but I kept my voice steady. What else did Uncle Neil tell you? That Colorado has the best schools for art, and there's a house with a big backyard for a dog. She pulled back, suddenly excited. Are we getting a dog, Daddy? So they've been promising her a dog too. Another manipulation tactic. Lily, whatever happens with the divorce, we're staying in Chicago. Your school, your friends, your dance class, those are all here. Her face fell. But Mommy said. A knock at the door interrupted us. I opened it to find Richard Montgomery, Vanessa's father and retired judge, standing in the hallway with an uncharacteristically humbled expression. May I come in? His voice, usually commanding, sounded tired. I hesitated, then stepped aside. Lily, why don't you watch some TV while I talk with Grandpa Richard? Once Lily was settled in the other room, Richard spoke bluntly. I need to know what's really happening, Dominic. Vanessa tells one story, but Patrick suggests another. What has she told you? That you've been emotionally distant for years. That you prioritize work over family. That you've manipulated financial records to hide assets. He paused. But I've known you for 15 years, and that doesn't align with the man I've observed. I studied my father-in-law's face. Richard had always been fair, if somewhat cold. His judicial impartiality extended to family matters, making him respected but rarely embraced. I can show you some of what we've found, I said carefully. But I need your word it stays between us. You have it. I showed him selected emails between Vanessa and Neil, financial records of their theft, and recordings of them discussing how to manipulate the divorce proceedings. As he reviewed the evidence, Richard's expression darkened. Vanessa has always had issues with truthfulness. Margaret and I were perhaps too lenient when she was young. He set down the documents with a heavy sigh. I failed as a father in that regard. We all failed to see who she really was, I said quietly. Richard met my eyes. What will you do now? What I must to protect Lily. He nodded solemnly. As you should. After Richard left, promising to speak with Vanessa, I received a text from her requesting a private meeting. We met at a neutral coffee shop the following day. I think we can solve this amicably, Vanessa said, her voice honeyed with false reasonableness. Joint custody, equal division of assets. We both want what's best for Lily. I noted she was wearing a new blouse, hair perfectly styled, makeup subtle but flawless, her courtroom appearance. But something was different in her eyes. Panic? Why the change of heart? Your initial filing demanded full custody and claimed I was abusive. I was angry. People say things in anger. She reached for my hand across the table. We once loved each other, Dom. Can't we remember that and make this less painful? I withdrew my hand, noticing the small pinhole of a button camera on her necklace. She was recording, hoping to provoke an outburst. I'm open to reasonable solutions, I said neutrally. Have your attorney contact Sloan. Her facade cracked slightly. You've changed. No, Vanessa. I've finally seen clearly. Later that day, Sloan called with news. Vanessa's hired Belinda Morris to replace Walsh. Morris is known for scorched earth tactics in custody battles. What does that mean for us? It means they're getting desperate. My source says they're planning to file an emergency hearing for temporary full custody. And Dominic? He paused. We've received information they may be preparing a false domestic violence allegation. You need to be extremely careful. I hung up, staring at the Chicago skyline from my apartment window. The waves of our collision were spreading wider, the circles of damage growing. But I would not be drowned in their lies. Not this time. Mr. Foster? This is Detective Laurel Martinez from Chicago PD. The woman's voice on the phone was professional, neutral. I'm investigating a complaint filed against you for threatening behavior and stalking. I'd like to schedule a time to speak with you. My stomach dropped, but I kept my voice steady. May I ask who filed this complaint? I'm not at liberty to say over the phone, but I think you can guess. She paused. Look, I normally don't do this, but I worked with Richard Montgomery before he retired from the bench. He always spoke highly of you. A connection I hadn't anticipated. What would you recommend, detective? Bring a lawyer to our meeting. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock at the station. I called Sloan immediately, who connected me with Victoria Chun, a criminal defense attorney from his network. We met for breakfast the next morning. This is a classic desperation move, Chun explained, stirring her coffee. File a police report right before a custody hearing to create the impression of danger. The timing isn't coincidental. Will I be arrested? The thought of Lily seeing me in handcuffs made me physically ill. Not if we play this right. I've reviewed your evidence. We're bringing copies to the interview, not to defend you, but to demonstrate the pattern of false allegations. She leaned forward. Remember, say as little as possible. Let me do the talking. Detective Martinez turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense demeanor. She led us to a small interview room. For the record, she began, Mrs. Foster claims you've been parking outside her residence, sending threatening texts and following her to work. She's seeking a protective order. Chun placed a folder on the table. Before my client responds, you should review these materials. They demonstrate an ongoing pattern of false claims by Mrs. Foster and her partner, Neil Foster, the complainant's brother-in-law. Martinez raised an eyebrow but reviewed the documents. Location data showing I was nowhere near Vanessa's residence on the dates claimed, the complete text message history showing no threats, and a copy of the restraining order I'd already filed against Neil. Mr. Foster obtained this order after discovering his brother and wife were planning to take his daughter out of state against court orders, Chun explained. We believe this complaint is retaliation and an attempt to influence upcoming custody proceedings. Martinez closed the folder. Mrs. Foster didn't mention the existing restraining order. I'm sure she didn't, I said quietly. The detective's eyes met mine. No charges will be filed at this time. But Mr. Foster, I recommend extreme caution. These situations can escalate quickly. As we left, Martinez pulled me aside. Off the record, document everything. I've seen cases like this before. They rarely end well for false accusers, but the damage along the way can be severe. The attacks intensified over the following week. I returned to my apartment one evening to find the locks changed. My work computer was hacked, with someone, Neil undoubtedly, attempting to plant inappropriate material in my browsing history. Anonymous calls to my firm claimed I was misusing company resources. Daddy, are you sick? Lily asked during our weekend together. I frowned. No, sweetie. Why do you ask? Mommy and Uncle Neil said you're sick in your head and need medicine. Her innocent eyes watched me carefully. They said that's why you're making up stories about them. I took a deep breath, fighting the rage building inside me. Lily, adults sometimes disagree about things. But I promise you I'm perfectly healthy. Mrs. Jacobson told me she's sorry about what you're going through. My confusion must have shown. My teacher, Lily clarified. She asked me to stay after class yesterday. She said sometimes parents say things to children during divorce that aren't true, and it's not the children's job to fix it. I made a mental note to thank Mrs. Jacobson for her kindness, and to document this conversation. Later that night, my phone rang with an unknown number. Dominic, it's Gregory Walsh. Vanessa's former attorney. What can I do for you, Mr. Walsh? I can't be specific due to attorney-client privilege, but I felt compelled to warn you. His voice was low, tense. There are discussions happening about taking your daughter out of the country. I've withdrawn from the case partly because of ethical concerns about certain strategies being considered. When? I gripped the phone tighter. Soon. Very soon. That's all I can say. I immediately called Sloan, who activated what we'd been calling Protocol Omega, Our emergency plan involving Richard Montgomery, Meredith Weiss, and a private investigator who'd been tracking Neil's increasingly desperate meetings with loan sharks and offshore banking contacts. The next morning, I received an official notice of an emergency custody hearing scheduled for Friday, just 3 days away, where Judge Eleanor West would hear Vanessa's request for immediate full custody based on new evidence of unstable and dangerous behavior. Sloane called within minutes. "This is it, Dominic. They're making their final play before attempting to flee with Lily. Are we ready?" My voice sounded distant, as if belonging to someone else. "More than ready. In fact, I've taken the liberty of contacting Neil's gambling associates through intermediaries. They're quite interested to learn he's planning to leave the country without settling his debts." I should have been shocked by this ethical gray area, but found myself nodding instead. "Friday then." "Friday," Sloane confirmed. "The truth finally gets its day in court." As I hung up, I gazed at Lily's school picture on my desk. The visible darkness that had surrounded me these past months was about to meet the cleansing light of justice. I was ready. Judge Eleanor West studied the stack of documents before her, silver-rimmed glasses perched on her nose. The emergency hearing was scheduled to begin in 15 minutes, but she'd arrived early to review the case file. I watched from my seat as her expression shifted from neutral to concerned to something resembling controlled outrage. "Your Honor has taught at Northwestern Law for 20 years, Sloane had informed me earlier. She studied under Richard Montgomery and has a reputation for seeing through manipulation tactics." I nodded, trying to control my racing heart. "Will that be enough? Combined with our evidence?" "Absolutely." The courtroom doors opened, and Vanessa entered with her attorney, Belinda Morris. I felt my breath catch. Vanessa had a conspicuous bruise under her right eye, partially concealed with makeup but visible enough to be noticed. Morris guided her client to their table, casting a performative glare in my direction. Sloane leaned close to whisper, "Right on cue. We anticipated this." The judge called the court to order. "Before we begin, I should disclose that I once studied under Judge Richard Montgomery, Mrs. Foster's father. If either party objects to my presiding—" "No objection, Your Honor," Morris interrupted eagerly. "No objection," Sloane echoed more formally. Judge West nodded. "Mrs. Foster is seeking emergency full custody of the minor child Lily Foster, age 10, based on claims of threatening behavior, stalking and," she glanced at the newest filing, "an alleged physical assault occurring 2 nights ago. Mrs. Foster, is that correct?" Vanessa stood, the perfect picture of a frightened spouse. "Yes, Your Honor. I fear for my safety and my daughter's." Morris added, "We also request the court to consider supervised visitation only, given the escalating pattern of behavior." The judge turned to our table. "Mr. Foster, your response?" Sloane rose. "Your Honor, we categorically deny these allegations and have evidence proving their falsity. Furthermore, we have reason to believe Mrs. Foster and her partner, Neil Foster, the defendant's brother, are planning to remove the child from the country imminently." Morris scoffed. "Baseless accusations." "Mrs. Foster," Judge West said, peering over her glasses, "my clerk informs me that airline tickets to Cancun were purchased yesterday in your name and your daughter's. One-way tickets. Would you care to explain?" Vanessa faltered momentarily. "A vacation, Your Honor. To help Lily deal with the stress of the divorce." "A one-way vacation during ongoing custody proceedings? Without notifying the court or the child's father?" Judge West's tone was ice. "We plan to return." The return date was flexible. The courtroom doors opened again, and Detective Martinez entered with a uniformed officer escorting Neil, who looked disheveled and angry. Sloane smiled slightly. "Your Honor, we'd like to inform the court that Neil Foster was detained at O'Hare International Airport this morning attempting to transport large sums of cash and Mrs. Foster's jewelry collection out of the country." Vanessa's composure cracked. "That's not, he was just." Regarding the alleged assault, Sloane continued smoothly, producing a folder. "Mr. Foster was at a business dinner with 6 colleagues at the time Mrs. Foster claims the assault occurred. We have time-stamped video footage from the restaurant, credit card receipts, and sworn statements from all attendees." Morris whispered urgently to Vanessa, whose face had gone pale. "And the bruise?" Judge West asked directly. "We believe it to be self-inflicted or staged, Your Honor. A common tactic in contentious custody battles." The courtroom doors opened a third time. A woman in scrubs entered hesitantly. "Your Honor," Sloane said, "this is Rachel Chin, a nurse from Northwestern Memorial who worked with Mrs. Foster. She's come forward voluntarily with relevant information." Judge West nodded permission. Miss Chin, approach and state your purpose. The nurse walked forward nervously. I overheard Dr. Montgomery, Mrs. Foster, in the locker room 2 days ago, discussing with a colleague how to create a convincing bruise using makeup and mild irritants that would cause temporary swelling without permanent damage. She specifically mentioned needing it for a court appearance today. Vanessa's face contorted with rage. She's lying. I never. Silence, Mrs. Foster, Judge West commanded. This court takes false allegations of domestic violence extremely seriously. They not only waste judicial resources but mock the suffering of genuine victims. The judge reviewed our evidence for several tense minutes, then looked up with resolve. Based on the evidence presented and the apparent attempt to remove the child from the jurisdiction, I am granting temporary full physical custody to Dominic Foster, with supervised visitation for Vanessa Montgomery Foster pending full psychological evaluation. She continued, her voice stern. I'm also ordering all of the Foster's joint assets frozen immediately, and mandating psychological evaluations for both Mrs. Foster and Neil Foster. This court does not look kindly on parents who weaponize their children or the judicial system. Morris leaned over to whisper to Vanessa, who nodded reluctantly. Your Honor, Morris said, standing, given these developments, we would like to request a recess to discuss potential settlement terms. Judge West checked her watch. You have until 3 o'clock. If you haven't reached an agreement by then, we'll resume with my full ruling, which I assure you neither party will find entirely satisfactory. As the court recessed, I felt lightheaded with relief. Sloane clapped my shoulder. Well done, Dominic. The tide has turned. Outside the courtroom, I found myself face to face with Richard Montgomery, who had been watching from the back row. Would you be willing to meet with Vanessa? He asked quietly. Not alone, I'll be present. She needs to understand the reality of her situation. I nodded, exhausted but resolute. For Lily's sake, I'll try one more time. The truth had finally emerged from the shadows, bringing with it not the satisfaction of revenge I'd once anticipated, but the sobering responsibility of rebuilding a life from the wreckage of betrayal, for my daughter's sake. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Lily and I settled into a new rhythm. We'd moved to a townhouse in Lincoln Park, close enough to her school that she could maintain her friendships, but far enough from our old home that we didn't drive past it daily. The physical distance helped create emotional distance from the pain. Nights were the hardest for Lily. In the beginning, she'd wake up crying from nightmares, sometimes reverting to behaviors she'd outgrown years earlier, asking for night lights, checking under the bed for monsters, crawling into my bed after bad dreams. The therapist says it's normal, Margaret Montgomery assured me over coffee. Vanessa's mother had surprised everyone by becoming a steady presence in our lives after the divorce. Children process trauma in waves. She's doing remarkably well, all things considered. I watched Lily through the window as she played with neighborhood kids in our small backyard. Her laughter came more frequently now, a sound I'd feared might be permanently dimmed. I worry about the long-term effects, I admitted to Margaret. What happens when she starts dating? Will she expect betrayal? Will she think that's what relationships are supposed to be? Margaret's eyes, so like Vanessa's yet warmer, wiser, met mine. That depends largely on what she sees from you going forward. Children learn from observation more than instruction. Vanessa had been following the visitation schedule with unexpected reliability. The court-mandated supervision had been lifted after her psychological evaluation revealed no immediate dangers, just deeply ingrained patterns of narcissistic behavior and pathological lying that therapy might help manage, if not cure. She's trying in her way, Richard had told me during one of our now regular lunches. The humiliation of being exposed publicly shook her more than I've ever seen. Neil had disappeared to Seattle, our last connection severed with the final divorce decree. Occasionally Lily asked about him, but with decreasing frequency as the months passed. Did you know Uncle Neil owed bad men money? She'd asked me once, revealing that she'd overheard more than anyone realized during those tense months. Yes, I'd answered honestly. People sometimes make mistakes that lead to other mistakes. Is that why he and Mommy lied so much? Out of the mouths of babes. Partly. But adults are complicated, Lily. Sometimes people lie because they're scared, or because they've been lying so long they forget how to tell the truth. Information about Neil filtered back through professional channels. His gambling debts had been worse than we'd known, nearly $200,000 to people who didn't use courts to collect. His unethical behavior had essentially blacklisted him from architectural work throughout the Midwest. Vanessa had received probation at the hospital after an internal investigation revealed she'd falsified research data. Her reputation had suffered, but her surgical skills had saved her position, albeit with significantly increased oversight. Northwestern couldn't risk the liability of keeping her in research, Meredith explained during one of our coffee meetings that had gradually evolved from professional to personal. But surgeons with her technical skills are still valuable, even with personality issues. Meredith Weiss had become an unexpected constant in my post-divorce life. Her own experience with a manipulative ex-husband had given her insight that helped me navigate co-parenting with Vanessa. More importantly, Lily had taken to her immediately. Meredith doesn't treat me like I'm going to break, Lily had observed after Meredith took her to the Art Institute one Saturday. 6 months after the divorce, an email from Neil appeared in my inbox. Dominic, I know you have every reason to delete this without reading. I wouldn't blame you. What I did was unforgivable, betraying my brother, the man who stood by me when no one else would. I'm in recovery now. 6 months clean from gambling. It doesn't excuse what I did, but it might help explain some of it. I was in a spiral of debt and desperation when Vanessa and when we started. I envied everything about your life, your success, your integrity, your family. Instead of working to build something similar, I tried to steal yours. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I destroyed, and I'll carry that regret forever. Neil. I stared at the message for a long time before closing it without responding. Perhaps someday I'd find words worth sending back, but not yet. Lily continued to heal with the help of her therapist. The school reported she had become something of a mentor to another child whose parents were divorcing bitterly, finding purpose in her pain. She has your resilience, Lily's teacher told me during a conference. And she's remarkably insightful about emotions for her age. 8 months post-divorce, Vanessa texted to inform me she'd accepted a new position at Northwestern Memorial and had begun dating another doctor. I felt nothing but mild relief that she was moving forward with her life, and away from her obsession with mine. That evening, as I helped Lily with her science project, my phone rang with a call from Meredith. Just checking if we're still on for the museum tomorrow, she said, her voice bringing an involuntary smile to my face. Absolutely. Lily's been talking about the new dinosaur exhibit all week. After we hung up, Lily looked at me with surprising seriousness. I like Meredith. She makes you smile the real way. The real way. She nodded solemnly. Your eyes smile too, not just your mouth. Like before, everything. From the devastating innocence of one question, to the healing wisdom of another, my daughter continued to amaze me with her perception. That night, after tucking Lily in, I stood at my bedroom window watching the Chicago skyline. The echoes of betrayal were fading, replaced gradually by something new and tentatively hopeful. Perhaps we would be okay after all. 1 year to the day after Lily's innocent question had unraveled my life, I stood in our kitchen preparing her favorite birthday pancakes. Chocolate chip with whipped cream smiley faces, a tradition that had survived the collapse of my marriage. Dad, did you use the special flour? Lily appeared in the doorway, hair still rumpled from sleep, iPad clutched to her chest. Gluten-free, just like the doctor recommended. I flipped a perfectly golden pancake. And I got the test results back yesterday, no celiac disease, just a mild sensitivity. So these are celebration pancakes too. Lily climbed onto a stool at the counter, watching me cook with a contentment that had been hard-won over months of therapy, tears, and painfully honest conversations. Ms. Robertson gave me an A+ on my history project, she announced, referring to the presentation she'd been working on for weeks. She said my analysis of primary sources was college level. That's my girl. I set a plate in front of her, complete with whipped cream smile and strawberry nose. Your mom texted that she'll pick you up at 4 for your dinner celebration. Lily nodded, digging into her breakfast. She's bringing Dr. Mark. Is that okay? Of course it is. I kept my voice neutral, positive. He seems nice. Vanessa's new relationship with Dr. Mark Chin, a cardiothoracic surgeon, had been developing for about 6 months. After initial wariness, I'd been surprised to discover he was genuinely decent, calm, ethical, and a stabilizing influence on Vanessa. He's so boring, Lily had confided after their first meeting. He talks about heart valves and optimal running shoes. But boring was exactly what Vanessa needed. In our post-therapy co-parenting sessions, I'd noticed subtle changes in her behavior. Less manipulation, more direct communication. Her therapist had apparently helped her connect her deceptive tendencies to unresolved childhood issues and unacknowledged insecurities about her own achievements. My own life had transformed dramatically over the past year. The affordable housing project I'd been developing before the divorce had gained national recognition, earning me a promotion to full partner at the firm. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my personal life had been imploding, my professional life had flourished. More significantly, my relationship with Meredith had deepened into something neither of us had anticipated. What began as professional consultation had evolved into friendship, then careful dating, and now something that felt solid and true. Dad. Lily interrupted my thoughts. Can Meredith come to my party on Saturday? She's already planning to. She's bringing that camera you wanted to try, the instant print one. Lily beamed. Yes. And did you ask her about the hiking trip? All arranged. You, me, and Meredith. Starved Rock State Park 2 weekends from now. Cabins are booked. These family outings had become regular occurrences, Meredith suggesting adventures that pulled both Lily and me out of our comfort zones in the best possible ways. Last month's camping trip had ended with us huddled in the tent during a thunderstorm, telling ghost stories by flashlight and laughing until our sides hurt. After breakfast, I dropped Lily at school and headed to the office for a half-day of work before taking the afternoon off for her birthday. As I reviewed project specifications, my phone buzzed with a text from Neil. Happy birthday to Lily. No need to tell her it's from me. Just wanted you to know I'm thinking of her today. It was the 4th message I'd received from him since the divorce. I hadn't responded to any of them, but I hadn't blocked his number either. Each message showed a Neil I barely recognized, reflective, remorseful, sober. He'd started working with a nonprofit in Seattle, designing transitional housing for homeless individuals. According to Richard, who maintained minimal contact with him, Neil had been clean from gambling for 9 months and was attending therapy twice weekly. I set my phone down without responding. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt, or at least not yet. That evening, after Lily returned from her dinner with Vanessa and Dr. Mark, she curled up on the couch beside me, leafing through a new book on astronomy they had given her. Mom seems different now, she observed. Less sharp. I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. People can change when they realize they need to. Dr. Mark asked her 3 times what she wanted for dessert, and she actually answered instead of saying, whatever you think. Lily mimicked her mother's old passive-aggressive tone perfectly. And she didn't check her phone once during dinner. Small changes but significant ones. Vanessa was learning, however belatedly, that honesty required less energy than deception. Later, as I tucked Lily into bed, she grabbed my hand. Dad? Are you happy now? Like really happy? The question caught me off guard with its echo of the one that had started everything. But unlike that night a year ago, I could answer with complete honesty. Yes, Lily. I really am. Her smile was the best birthday gift I could have received. Me too. After she fell asleep, I joined Meredith on the balcony where she was waiting with 2 glasses of wine. Tomorrow we would celebrate Lily's birthday with friends and family. Next week I would finalize the paperwork on our new house, a fresh start with room enough for the 3 of us. And next month, if all went according to plan, I would ask Meredith a question of my own. The foundation was laid. The reconstruction was well underway. The evening air hummed with the sounds of celebration. Streamers and balloons decorated our backyard, and the remnants of birthday cake littered paper plates abandoned as the children raced to catch fireflies in the gathering dusk. 1 year since the day that had changed everything. I leaned against the deck railing watching Lily and Meredith hunting for fireflies together. Lily's laughter, full, unreserved, floated across the yard as she cupped her hands around a glowing insect before carefully releasing it back into the night. Seeing them together filled me with a peace I'd once thought irretrievably lost. She looks happy. The voice beside me belonged to Richard Montgomery, who had arrived with Margaret earlier for Lily's birthday celebration. She is happy. We both are. I handed him a cold beer. Different than before, but maybe better. Richard nodded thoughtfully. Meredith is good for both of you. She grounds you. More than that, I admitted, touching the small velvet box hidden in my pocket. She helped rebuild us. The evening had been full of unexpected moments. Vanessa and Dr. Mark had attended the early portion of the party, bringing an expensive telescope that had delighted Lily. They'd interacted with the other parents with surprising ease, the awkwardness of our situation softened by time and changed circumstances. Most shocking had been Neil's appearance just before sunset, standing nervously at the gate with a wrapped package and genuine contrition in his eyes. He'd contacted me last week asking permission to attend briefly, and after much consideration I'd agreed, for Lily's sake. Uncle Neil. Lily had exclaimed, running to hug him without hesitation. Children's capacity for forgiveness never ceased to amaze me. I'd expected anger or resentment at seeing him, but instead felt a strange detachment, as if observing a scene from someone else's life. Neil had aged a decade in a year, thinner, grayer, the cocky charm replaced by a humbled sobriety. Our interaction had been brief, civil. We'd never again be the brothers we once were, but perhaps we could eventually be something else. Something honest, if distant. Dominic. Vanessa approached cautiously, her fiancé already saying goodbyes to Lily across the yard. I forgot Lily's science project materials at home. I can bring them by tomorrow? Sure, I replied easily. A simple co-parenting exchange that would have been fraught with tension months earlier. I studied her face, noting how she'd changed too. The manipulative spark in her eyes had dimmed, replaced by something more genuine if wearier. Her therapy and relationship with Mark had apparently catalyzed real growth, not complete transformation, but enough to make her a better mother to Lily. Your parents mentioned you're engaged, I said, nodding toward the ring on her finger. Yes. Summer wedding. Small ceremony. She hesitated. Lily's excited about being a bridesmaid. She mentioned it. She likes Mark. He's stable. Vanessa smiled slightly. Not very exciting, but I'm learning that's actually a good thing. The conversation lapsed into surprisingly comfortable silence as we watched Lily directing a firefly-catching expedition with her friends. I never thought we'd get here, Vanessa admitted quietly. After everything. I didn't think we could be in the same place without hostility. Time changes things, I replied simply. As guests departed and the party wound down, Meredith discreetly organized the gift cleanup while I tucked an exhausted Lily into bed. Best birthday ever, she mumbled sleepily, clutching the astronomy book from Neil alongside the telescope from her mother. Better than Disney World last year? I asked, smoothing her hair. Way better. Everyone was here. Together. Not fighting. Her eyes fluttered closed. Are you happy, Dad? The recurring question, but this time I answered without hesitation. Very happy, Lil. Me too, she murmured before drifting off. After she fell asleep, I joined the small gathering of our closest friends and family on the patio. Richard and Margaret, Patrick and his wife, and several colleagues who'd stood by me during the darkest days. Meredith slipped her hand into mine, her head resting lightly against my shoulder as we gazed at the stars appearing overhead. Ready? She whispered, knowing what I had planned. I squeezed her hand in response, then clinked my glass to gather everyone's attention. I wanted to thank you all for coming today, not just to celebrate Lily's birthday, but to be part of this journey we've been on. I looked around at the faces watching me, people who had witnessed both my devastation and my recovery. A year ago I thought my life was ending. Instead, it was just beginning again in a different form. I turned to Meredith, taking both her hands in mine as conversations hushed. Meredith, you came into our lives as a professional consultant, became a trusted friend, and grew into the missing piece of our family. Lily adores you. I love you. And if you'll have us, I dropped to one knee, producing the small velvet box. We'd like to make it official. Her eyes filled with tears as I opened the box to reveal the emerald engagement ring we'd admired months ago in an antique shop window. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes. As cheers erupted around us, I rose to embrace her, overwhelmed by the journey that had brought us here. What had begun with betrayal had somehow led to authentic joy, not despite the pain but through it. Later, after everyone had gone and with Meredith asleep upstairs, I stood alone in the quiet backyard. Looking up at the star-filled sky, I realized the true victory wasn't in winning the divorce or exposing the betrayal. It was in rebuilding a life so complete and genuine that those who once tried to destroy it became increasingly irrelevant to my happiness. That was the real revenge. Living well, loving deeply, and leaving the darkness behind.